Basically, we were talking about how the dating marketplace now, it's a lose-lose for everyone, really, isn't it? And like a lot of guys, they think that they just assume that women just have it easy and it's amazing for women. And in many ways it is, because if you're a hot 23-year-old, then you've got this massive leverage. But we were saying that actually it's not necessarily so great for them, is it? Because if you've been a hot young woman in your prime and you're out there and you're just experiencing, you know, these kind of top tier kind of situations, top tier dudes, etc., etc., and then you end up, you know, a few years later, your market value's declined a little bit. You end up sort of back in your hometown. You have to marry some random dude that you used to be at college with. How's that ever going to satisfy them?
Yeah, I think for men, just our need for variety in an evolutionary sense means we're willing to basically make the cross and down. So you can be banging the hottest girl in the world, but eventually you're going to kind of get bored of that because you need variety. So you'd be willing to kind of duck down a bit, really, in terms of standards. For women, it's very much, again, evolutionary principles here. Don't shoot the messenger. It's very much mate across and up because it's evolution. So they're always going to go for top tier, and the ones that rise to the top, you know, the really beautiful women who have game and understand how to gain social standing and access the right circles. How on earth, when she's been imprinted with those experiences and mindset, will she be able to settle down with Rob's from accounting?
Yeah.
You know, with his ball patch and slightly tubby and no game at all. It's going to be very disingenuous with how she's going to do it because she needs the provisioning and resources. But is she going to be slightly resentful of her situation and of the guy? 1,000% yes.
But do you think that there's is there a sub-tier of guys who they might not be Leonardo DiCaprio, but they are... Yeah. Basically, we're here, ladies. No, is there a sub-tier of guys who are sort of... Okay, they might not be... Because there's so many tiers, right? You might not be elite level, you're not movie star level, but... you're kind of good enough, and you do have some understanding of game. I mean, is there enough of those dudes even to go around? Do you think for these women who want to settle down? I don't know what the right answer is. I'm just thinking that it's not like everybody is either fucking amazing or they're a hopeless chump. I mean, there are shades of grey here, aren't there?
I think the biggest issue, and again, it's with Anglosphere dating, I see a lot, is women are being sold this false narrative that they can have it all. They can have the career and then cash out the chips at the end at 35, 36 and have the man they want. It's fucking horseshit.
But we always say that in the manosphere space or whatever. But just to play devil's advocate, I mean, so the concept of like the blue pill alpha, right? So the guy who, in many ways, he is successful. He's maybe got money. He's maybe decent looking, maybe quite well dressed, goes to the gym, whatever. He might not have that killer instinct player mindset. He might not be able to keep you on a toe psychologically, but he's kind of ticking the other boxes.
Right.
There's plenty of those dudes who would wife up the girl when she's 35 and be like, okay, yeah, she'll make a good mother, blah, blah, blah. Is that a decent enough compromise, or do you think that, because my suspicion is that even if he's sort of ticking the societal boxes, okay, he's got some money, he's quite good looking, whatever, but if he doesn't have that game understanding, that's going to cause problems down the line? Or do you think maybe it's all right?
It's a really, really, really good question. I think understanding game, understanding how to handle women, understanding her mindset better than she understands herself. It's an education in protection of your own life. I think it's let's be honest, it's a learned skill. No, I don't think any man really understands this stuff until they've kind of gone into the fire of it and really got to grips with it. Female psychology, I mean, thank God, it's crazy, isn't it? Thank God we live in an era where all of this information is actually available for free, traded on the internet. So you can absolutely educate yourself and safeguard yourself for this short existence you live, yet we still get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of men who just pretend it isn't happening and don't want to do the work, right? And again, not to quote the Robs in the steam room, but do the work. But it's pathetic victim mindset when you have this prized evolutionary information available and you're still not willing to safeguard your own life and just learn it for free. It's unreal, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you really think about it.
All of that.
The first time I've realised.
Yeah, all of that information is absolutely out there. But I mean, what we're doing, which we talked about this the other day. I mean, what we're adding to that is obviously we've read all the stuff on the internet. We've consumed like tons and tons of content.
We've read all the stuff on the internet.
We've read everything. I've read everything on the internet.
By the edge.
But what we're doing is actually going out there into the field and field testing. Field testing. I mean, we're going out there. We're interacting with real life women in real time. And guys will say, well, Troy's this age or whatever, are you out of touch? Well, no, because we're actually out there dating ourselves in the prime target market, but also training other guys, and we're getting all the feedback from them in terms of what they're experiencing and everything. So really, we have the theory down because we know the red pill theory and all that still, we're versed in that, but we also are able to bring these real life sort of insights to it as well, which is just a little sort of pat on the back for us, really. But I mean, that's why I think our content remains valuable, because we're not just some of these American guys, they're regurgitating the rational male, or they're kind of regurgitating ideas that have been around for a long time. And
Canadian guys.
Canadian guys. And not really bringing much that's new to the party. And this stuff is ever evolving, right? I mean, it's changing at an exponential rate.
And not to name names, but a fascinating insight into that, which literally is an example of that in real time, is one of the big names who I would argue, Troy's, not tinted with this, but I would argue rips off the rational male, then hosts his own kind of fresh and fit style red meat show, and really, again, not naming names, but his lack of understanding of actually how women operate and how to interact with women was absolutely showcased to me. It was many episodes, very much a car crash. I'm just thinking, fucking hell. That's a great example of like rubber meets the road not working, right? That's our bust. Because you can read all the theory you want, and we always say this to students we teach. We teach, every student we teach has overdosed on theory. But in terms of getting out there, experiential learning, a bit like playing tennis, practicing the stroke of the ball, the feel of the court.
Stroke of the balls.
It's not there, and it's experiential learning. You have to be out there, fucking rubber meets the road, and putting this stuff into action.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I 100% agree. In regard to the topic of like just general happiness with dating, though, I mean, like, I think increasingly both women and men are becoming less happy with the way things are, because guys are less happy because we have a problem at the front end, right? We have a problem, okay, can I actually get a date? Is she going to turn up on the date and not flake? Is she actually going to fucking respond to my text? Is she going to ghost me? We've got all of that to contend with because it's very competitive. Obviously, women have got all these multitude of options. But for women, it's also difficult a little bit further down the line, because they have the difficulty of, okay, so can I actually get commitment from this guy that I'm attracted to? That's the first thing. And of course, they're always attracted to the dude who are the most non-committal ever. And can I lock down or get into a long-term thing with a high-value man? And often that's just not really, especially as they start to get older and their value depreciates, that's not always possible. And then, like you said, then they get locked down or in a long-term relationship with a guy, but he's not the guy that she was hanging out on the yacht with when she was 23. And that's got to fucking, like you say, you can't unremember those early experiences, can you?
100%. I think my main thing is, thinking out loud in real time is, unless you're planning on actually having kids with a woman you're with, why on earth get too attached to her? And I'm not, I'm coming from the perspective. Well, no, I'm coming from the lens of an avoidant personality style. But, thinking out loud, why get too attached? Why not just date around and have fun until you can no longer do that? I mean, there is a certain dopamine snake rush from the lust phase of any relationship, and then you can absolutely build connection with a woman without being exclusive. And that's maybe a controversial thing to say, but that's what I believe.
I think you can. I mean, and that kind of is probably my life path at the moment. Although
that's absolutely what you've done for the last.
It is absolutely, and
it's reading out your life. I'm doing
yeah. Also, this is your life when he brings out that book and
that was a great show back. Just when he did that, then I switched off.
But that's kind of been my life plan. I actually did a tweet about this today, basically saying, because with the whole, we won't go into this too much, but the whole Destiny and Melina thing, they've broken down, and I said, well, they've divorced, and I said, well, yes, Destiny would say, well, monogamous relationships also have these same problems of jealousy and cheating and infidelity and blah, blah, blah. But obviously poly relationships are even worse, because if you're actually going into the thing, giving your partner permission, like absolute permission to go and bang around.
Do you think it's worse, though? Like, really? Because at least you've kind of put your hat in the arena of, okay, she's going to get porked. I mean, I think, look, one is not better than the other, but I think there's a certain intently sharp dagger to the heart with female betrayal when you know your girlfriend of however many years you've smuggled her into your arms and whispered sweet nothing to her ears, has gone out and sucked another dude's dick and actually got off. The worst bit is not them. I mean, it's bad them obviously cheating, but the fact they're actually, and we pretend they're not, but the fact they're actually obviously enjoying it because they've engineered it. And let's be honest, women are the choosers. As much as we try and bullshit ourselves, until you get to 0.1% rockstar Guns N' Roses status, women are absolutely the selectors. She's picked that man, she's deliberately, consciously created that action, and she's enjoyed it. And I think for me, that's been the biggest thing to get around. It's like, well, I'm a jealous motherfucker, right? I would not sign up to a poly relationship, but
in a funny way.
In a funny way, you're almost like being accepting, okay, she's probably going to do that, like whatever, let's get over it.
It could be a little bit of a cope though, couldn't it? It could be a little bit like...
I think a lot of these, so using one example, it's not exactly the same, but there's a girl in Colombia I porked for about 3 years on and off, and it was very much a cuckold thing where the boyfriend would watch and get off on it. And I eventually quizzed her when she snuck off from the boyfriend one day and came to me unannounced, so betrayal of the boyfriend even within this microcosm of the relationship. And I said, how did it even come to pass that you're out there porking guys and he's getting off on it? And she said, well, we were dating exclusive for about a year and I started pushing for an open relationship and he succumbed. And again, take it with a pinch of salt, it could be bullshit, but I wonder if a lot of these dudes are just kind of cucking out, accepting that they're not the kind of hero version of what they should be, not providing that framework of I'm going to walk away, which is obviously one of the most powerful concepts you can convey to a girl. You're not going to stand for bullshit, you will walk away. And they're always succumbing in advance, going, oh, it's all good, baby.
Yeah.
And actually deep fucking down, however feminine they are, and maybe they get off on it because there's a certain hot wifing trend, I think there's a big proportion of guys out there doing this where they're just kind of like falling on their own sword and they're taking the easy loss.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I mean, it's almost like this. Women have such power in the dating marketplace now that, like we were saying in another video that we did about, the role of finance, the role of money in relationships, and women, increasingly it seems like these things are becoming more transactional, sugar dating sites and stuff. So it could be that women are either demanding that, or women are kind of as part of the deal demanding, well, okay, you can kind of have me, but I'm going to bang around a bit as well. And the guy's kind of like, if the guy's not stumping up money, or maybe even worse, maybe both. I mean, there could be some terrible examples where the guy he's actually giving her an allowance and she gets to pork around as well. That would be the worst deal for the guy. But maybe there are some guys, and like you said, who are they have so little abundance and they're so desperate for intimacy and for whatever that they kind of sign up for that. And that's obviously a terrible place to be. But I don't know, man. I get what you're saying. I mean, I think in a way, I suppose the sort of the cope with Polly might be like, well, at least I've told her it's all right, so it's not quite as bad. But I mean, it would just never be something that I would willingly sign up to myself. I just think it's a terrible idea if it's open on both sides. I actually said that to Destiny when I met him. I met Destiny like this year, one evening, and he was quite cool. It was quite a fun evening, whatever. But I said to him at the time, I said, listen, for me personally, I don't think I could ever do that. I just think that I'm too jealous. It would just not fly. Even though, he also gets to do what he wants, and he's got his own fans, and he's got his groupies or whatever. So he's presumably having his fun on the side as well. But even then, I wouldn't want my main girl to be doing that shit.
And what did he say to that?
And he was kind of like, just different strokes for different folks. But even then, if I remember correctly, he was still sort of saying, look, I mean, but this does lead to, obviously, this isn't drama-free. This does lead to issues and stuff like that. But he was actually talking about the age difference between them a bit, actually, and saying, the people think that I've gone for her because she's a younger girl, but actually, if anything, he was saying that he felt that caused problems in the relationship. I don't personally really buy that. She's not that much younger than him, and like, I think we all... She's like early 20s and he's like 35 or something. So
that's exactly the age range we try and date. No, it's fine.
No. So I don't really buy that, but he was trying to make that argument. But anyway, so in the tweet, then I said, so I don't think poly works either, or it wouldn't work for me. So basically, what you guys need to do is become a failed aging bachelor like me, and just date in perpetuity, because I believe it's absolutely possible to do that, or at least for a very long time.
So I think the complicating factor, and I'm speaking again from what I personally want from my life moving forward, is
kids.
Yeah, and I think the complicating factor is then, right, so the two models are, you swan in, swan out, don't really give a monkey's about what she's up to, which is not me. I like to have control, I'm quite controlling, I'm a Scorpio, I'm jealous. I love when I'm blaming a star sign. But no, I'm quite a jealous
Is that why you got the tattoo?
because I'm jealous. I think I was just smoking loads of weed at 15.
They'll have instant coffee for you.
I wouldn't. I don't know because I'm not in that position. But if I had kids with a woman, I can't imagine I'd be enamored with the idea of another dude coming in and kind of banging the girl I'm with, or banging the girl that I've fucked, and then also kind of fathering my kid. I mean.
Well, what's the worst thing there? Because we were talking about somebody.
Usurps on an evolutionary level. I mean.
Well, we were talking about somebody we know, and you know, so there's the issue. I mean, if you say you've broken up with the mother of the kid, or you weren't that into the mother of the kid in the first place, then somebody else coming in there and being her boyfriend, maybe would be less of a concern to you. Maybe, let's just say, for argument's sake, maybe that would be less of a concern. For me, I could see it almost being the major concern is actually who's raising the kid, because that's your kid. But the only problem with that is, even if you get married, there's no guarantee that won't happen either. Because, like for example, a guy that I know. Who I work with has had a situation. They weren't married, but his fiance got a kid together. They're now estranged. She's taken the kid away. He doesn't really get access to it. She has difficulty having access to the kid, blah, blah, blah. At some point, there's a reasonable chance she's going to meet some other dude. And then say that other dude's going to be the daddy. You know? And I mean, and that happens, and Pearl was talking about this because she's doing a documentary where she's interviewed like loads and loads of dudes who are in that kind of situation, and unfortunately that shit happens. So even if you're in a monogamous relationship, that could still end up winding up happening to you. You know, not you, but just a guy in general.
It's a tough gig, and I think the only way to safeguard it, again, you can't safeguard it, but the only way to safeguard it would be try and marry a girl with many green flags, right? Who's quite pure. I mean, it's just such nonsense. I can't believe I'm saying it, but kind of the stereotypical red pill agenda of a girl with very, very low body count, you know, quite traditional, maybe Eastern European. But even then you can't safeguard against it. But yeah, even thinking about it now, you know, and putting myself through that emotional arena, I hate the idea of another man being in the house, you know, I was with, and kind of with the woman I was with, and you know, even speaking to the kid I was with, I'm very... I think genetically bound. I should have been born in the Viking era, but I'm very.
I mean that would be the worst thing, really. I mean the worst of those.
And you know, one of these kind of red meat. Well, no, his advice is quite good, but one of these bigger red pill content creators talks about the ultimate worst case scenario, which is you knock up a bird, you're with her, you know, maybe she's your wife, whatever. You get divorced, you separate. You've got a couple of daughters. She hooks up with another man who brings in a couple of sons. And shit goes down, right? And it's a very dark view, but it's not out of the realms of possibility, right?
I mean, yeah, well, absolutely. So, yeah, no, I mean, it's so painful, these fucking potentialities. But of course, it's not to say this always happens. Obviously, it does work out. Not everybody. It's not going to go down this like horrendous, like catastrophic route for every single person. But there are a lot of risks out there. That's the problem. But it's like. So, I suppose the point I was making was, if you are trying to be more the swan in, swan out kind of guy, that may feel like, depending on the girl, depending on the circumstances, that might feel like a bigger risk, because if you're away for 3 months, and then there's time for her to meet somebody else and, you know, whatever. But I suppose the point I was making was that even within a conventional marriage, that could end up happening because she gets bored and she goes off and meets someone else anyway.
I do wonder if you have kids, though, will you continue to be the swan in, swan out guy? I've got a feeling evolution will kick in, and again, this is all just me guessing, but from what I hear from other people from other guys is, it's weird, but you just get drawn in because it's literally your flesh and blood, so you don't really want to leave as much. And
okay,
I can imagine that.
Yeah.
But equally, you don't want to sack in your mission if you're kind of this adventurer, like kind of we are, travelling the world, having fun, having these kind of emotional highs, emotional lows. If you sack that in and just become a stay-at-home dad, that's also a disaster. So you have to tactically be away anyway, but maybe you dial it in a bit.
I mean, I suppose the purists. Not those purists, not the Northern English purists. Yeah, with his pint of Ruddles, 185 in Spouter's Corner in Wood Green. There is a Wetherspoons called Spouter's Corner.
Has it got a watering can on the front?
Yeah, something like that. Like Paul was like, yeah, it's the cheapest Wetherspoons in London. It's like 185 for a pint of Ruddles.
Is it really 185? Mate, that's unbelievable.
We'll go after the show.
Let's check this out.
But how do we get to that anyway? But so the purists. What would the purists say? What are we talking about?
We were talking about whether you continue adventuring around the world or whether you stay at home. That was the last.
Oh, I suppose, okay, right. So the red pill purists might say, well, look, if your frame is strong enough, because everyone likes this idea of frame, don't they? If your frame is strong enough, if you are the archetypal Andrew Tate type character, your frame is so strong, your value is so high, theoretically, if you're that guy, you can almost do what you want, and she's gonna remain faithful to you because you're the highest value guy that she could possibly be.
I actually disagree with that.
Yeah, that's the aspiration, isn't it? That's where you want to, not you, but that's where you want to get to.
That's kind of like Genghis Khan mindset. You have 1,000 wives and they're not fucking doing anything, right?
Yeah. So that's going to be harder to pull off for Steve from Peterborough, who's working in the local NatWest, and whatever, right? Doesn't go to the gym and lives with his mum still. That's going to be harder to pull off for certain archetypes of dude. But theoretically, that is possible. That's the highest tier, isn't it? I suppose that maybe.
That's the ideal to shoot for. It really isn't it?
Yeah, but then on the other side of it, if you took out of the equation wanting to have kids, or it was a guy who doesn't want to have kids, I mean, what do you think about the idea of just saying, well, fuck it, I'm not going to get married then, so I might as well just keep dating and almost lean into that avoidant personality, really, and just be like, not being this cold, heartless motherfucker who never has any feelings for anybody, but just sort of being like, look, I'm going to keep things fairly loose, keep things fairly casual. I mean, does that work? Can that work?
Can it work with kids, or can it work without kids?
Without.
Absolutely without it can work. You can essentially just do the Errol Flynn routine and cruise the high seas until you probably aren't horny enough, but now your biohacks, your hormones are probably going to be horny too.
90. I think, well, we've talked about this before. I mean, I think even with hormonal optimization, I think my libido is, I don't think it's sky high in the sense that it used to be. I think that you do get a certain level-headedness that comes in. Need to get back on the trend, really. But I think a certain degree of level-headedness comes in, and you're kind of like, you can take it or leave it, but it's like, okay, I'm a bit more relaxed about this now, and I can only imagine that increasing as you get older, which is kind of fine, because if you get to a point where, and maybe then you do end up shacking up with somebody, but they're not, it's just like, well, I like the company, and blah blah blah. I don't know. I'm just thinking aloud here.
Personally, I'm in the same boat as you, where look, I know we're able to get away with things at this age, and we have options, but I'm the same as you in the sense that I cannot imagine being with a woman who's like 55, 60 and actually wanting to balk her. So then essentially what you're doing is signing up for a life of celibacy, which is fine, but are you not almost better doing that on your own? I just...
Well, I suppose the theory is, the idea is you get together with the woman, there's this bright, hot sexual chemistry at first, you guys are having an amazing time, that slowly cools over time, but then the friendship kicks in, and it's more about the friendship, the companionship, and if you have got kids, then you're raising the kids.
The problem is I've never seen a couple that age actually getting on.
That's what people want, isn't it? That's the thing, when you see those memes of these like couples who are in their 80s and they're holding hands and all that shit. That's what people are shooting for. But you're right, it doesn't work out very often.
It all comes down to a fear of death and a fear of not wanting to die alone. And essentially, it's not.
But even that's not a guarantee.
What?
Well, because even if we're
all going to die alone anyway. It's all a facade. No, there's no gap. I mean, just because you've got someone there, it doesn't mean shit. Your life is a very individual thing. Your death is a very individual thing. Like, regardless of whether you're married or not, it makes no difference whether you have 5 19-year-olds in the room, or you're some old fucking dude with fucking, an 80-year-old wife. You're still fucked. You're still dying on your own.
Well, I suppose theoretically, if you've got the woman and she's there holding your hand as your last breaths and all that kind of shit, I suppose that's what.
We've got eternal blackness anyway. Who gives a
Yeah.
I think the Heartiste model is correct. Live a life of eternal hedonism, and if you happen to knock up a couple of kids along the way, so be it. And if that's what you want, so be it. There's no right way to live, and society will always shame the outliers who try and live hedonistically, and that's there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to, if you want to step outside the box, you've got to be comfortable doing a pearl, being unfuckwithable, and just getting on with it.
I think you've got to look at. So what are the basic principles here? I think that marriage. I mean, I've never even really seriously ever myself considered legal marriage, but I think if you look at.
I'm the same as you. I've never even considered it. No.
But if you look at legal, if that ever became a thing, and you look at legal marriage, I mean, that just seems like an absolute disaster.
Especially in the age we live in now.
Yeah.
I mean, look, even 10 years ago, 2012, when I first got into day game, something like a traditional marriage, I mean, that's kind of how I assumed I would end up, actually. I hadn't really planned it, and I'm a terrible planner, future predictor, but I kind of assumed at some stage maybe I'll shack up, have some kids, but, you know, it seemed to be a more innocent era. Now it's just a ruthless market, and you're just like, what on earth would you marry?
I was looking at the figures the other day. In Forbes, it reports that it's still about 50% of first marriages fail, but second and third marriages, the rate's even higher. It's like 70.
way.
Yeah, well, I mean, no, it's higher. Second marriage.
People have already done it once, and they're like, oh well, this is old territory.
Fuck. I mean, they should have learned their lesson the first time, but it is like literally. Second marriage is 70 or even 80% second and third marriages. So there's that.
Off the first one, why people bother marrying again? Because I'm very much like, especially with something like marriage. I've never been married, but I know from talking to lots of clients and friends, the divorce is one of the most traumatic things you can go through. I think you've got death of a kid, because naturally parents are supposed to die first. So death of the kid is the most traumatic, and after that, divorce ranks in second most traumatic event you can have. So it's like, if you've been divorced once, why the fuck would you want to go through?
Well, I suppose there's always that thinking, like, oh, but this time it'll be different. It was her, you know.
Then you get down to third and fourth marriage, and you're like, have you not learned your?
I did meet a Canadian guy once who'd been married 6 times, which seemed excessive, but
6.
It's like keep spinning the wheel, keep spinning the wheel, you know, like going to the casino. But so I wouldn't. Yeah, so legal marriage I think is out, and then living with people I just find, you know, we've talked about this a lot, but I just find incredibly difficult. The idea of just living with somebody full time just seems like a fucking disaster. I don't know about you. But.
I would argue that I prefer to be married with a wife living in a separate house than I would prefer to be unmarried living in the same house as a woman I was dating.
Yeah. Well, Cameron Diaz actually, in the last few days, did an interview, and she was basically saying, "Oh, we should normalise people living in separate rooms or even separate houses."
Is that what she does with her partner?
Well, then she claims she doesn't with her husband because he's so great. But she was just saying, "Look, I don't think there's anything wrong with it." And it sparked some debate. People were talking about it on, you know, in the media and stuff. And
that makes no sense from her point.
No, but
no, I completely agree with her point. I agree with her, but it's so Weasley saying, no, we should do that, but no.
But I think she just kicked in and went, oh, not obviously, you know, my husband's wonderful though, so I'm not doing it. So I don't know. There's a bit of smoke and mirrors there, I think. But Helena Bonham Nutsack was famous for Helena Bonham Carter was famously, when she was with Tim Burton, the director, they famously kind of lived in separate houses, or at least separate, like it was a house not together, I think, but they had their own wings and stuff.
I mean, Churchill, secret to a happy marriage, and he was married for 30, 40 years. He said, never see your wife after 10 p.m. and never see her again before 12 p.m.
Yeah, I think there's a lot.
And they lived on different wings of. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot in that, but then if you take it a stage further and say, well, actually, I don't really want to live with somebody at all, even if it's in separate. Like, so then.
My experience of living with women has been a complete disaster.
No, mine has as well.
And utter. I mean, the last relationship I was in, which with the girl 4 years, ended 2-year gap, should have never got back with her.
Yeah.
4 years again. Incredibly toxic. And
No,
actually a total shit show living with her. I first moved in with her in COVID. Never lived with her before. And then COVID.
But that happened with people. I mean, that happened with me and my ex. You know, we moved in for a period of time, and actually, I have to say, with her, it was actually fine. It was actually okay. But I mean, that was actually, funnily enough, the most harmonious living together with somebody that I've had, which is why I should have curled onto her. But you know, it was also under sort of quite odd circumstance. And I'm not saying it wasn't like happy days the whole time. I mean, there's a lot of time I was incredibly fearful about it going into it, because I was like, shit, this is going to be a fucking disaster. Well, and then even then I'd have to go, sometimes I'd go out the flat and I have to call friends and be like, oh, fucking hell, man, I just need to, you know,
well,
because
the hardest thing for me to, you know, looking back on that now is something honestly, I just never really want to do again. Maybe I'll change my mind, whatever, you always have that right, but keeping the spark alive for someone, I mean, it's a double whammy. If you're married and you're living in the same place, I mean, I just don't understand how much game you must have to keep that spark alive.
You've got to be like a game Zen master in order to keep that spark. And even then, if you know, it's
there's just no way. I mean, maybe you can finagle it if you're living with her, you're not married, and you're living with her, and you kind of swat away on business and all this sort of stuff. You can kind of finagle a bit of jealousy, you know, dread and all that stuff. But the average marriage, I mean, you know, not to go too personal, but you know, using my parents as an example. My dad's quite an alpha guy in some ways, but in terms of, you know, living with a woman for 30 years, he gets absolutely beasted around the house. It's just like, I mean, it's just loss of frame, and then you can't recover it. I mean, it's You get it from the point of raising kids, but what a terrible existence to have to live. Just getting beasted around the house by a woman.
Well, sadly, have you read that book, Practical Female Psychology?
Yes.
Where it talks about the betarization curve.
Yeah, and
yeah.
Evolutionary base, right?
Yeah. So that seems like a terrible option. Then you've got sort of long-term relationships, but you're not living with her, which is kind of more what I've done really. I've more had like longer-term. You know, I've had some fairly long-standing relationships, but we've not lived together, and that's okay. But then you still have the problem of, you know, you're together for like 3 or 4 years or something, and you get the feels, and then it's very hard then to break that up, and that's not a great process either.
It's not clear cut, is it? If are you saying you're exclusive with them or not?
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, people will say, well, how do you know what she was doing? But I mean, yeah, I've been exclusive with girls, and we've not been living together. I think that's perfectly doable, but it's maybe not ideal. But now I'm coming around to the thinking, because that could also be very messy, and then you end up having to break up with them. I mean, there's a guy in our group at the moment who's talking about this, because I think he might even be living with her, but he's got ensnared with this relationship with this girl, and the reality is probably he needs to get out of it, but it's very hard to do that, you know. And there's always the excuse, isn't there? Oh, Christmas is coming up, Valentine's is coming up, oh, I've got this whole period at my job, I don't want to, you know.
It's a sunk cost thing, isn't it? But actually you're way more unhappy. I look back in hindsight with this girl I was with for an extra 4 years. If I had that time again, I would never have been with her. I was way more unhappy with her than I was with her.
Yeah. Actually, so what I'm doing at the moment, which is basically the avoidant personality casual dating, where I'm sort of seeing some and having some good times with them, and listen, you can make this sound very cold and be like, oh, you know, this is just this sexual thing. It's not. I mean, you have a great time with them, you banter with them, you hang out with them, you go to cool places with them, you're messaging, you know, you're having a good time, but it's not exclusive, it's not serious, and I tend to be happiest, to be honest, when I'm doing that. You know what I mean? I mean, it may seem shallow, it may seem like crazy, but and this is where the really avoidant bit comes in, but kind of not allowing it to get to that point where it starts to get serious, because that's a mistake I've made in the past, where I'm with
again, if you're not planning on having kids with her, I don't see any harm in life is all about emotions and perspective. What's wrong with just keeping it in lost mode and kind of honeymoon romance mode on purpose if you know you don't want to develop it into family? I think that's just playing the game smartly.
And I think
what's the fucking point in going through the hardship and pain just because it's something you should, by societal standards, do? It's bullshit. Why not just make it?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? But the problem is the sort of behaviour that I'm describing. There is a bit of a not stigma attached to it, but it's like people would say, well, you're obviously, you know, who hurt you? You know, you've got childhood issues. You're being very avoidant, and all of that is absolutely true. But it's still. I think not a bad solution. I think it's still a very possible solution for dudes if you're able to retain some value, or at least, you know, look like you've got some value, you've got a bit of riz, you know, you understand the game a little bit, you understand psychology, to just continue to date.
Ultimately, I think I'm talking from my own perspective, but I'm coming from a very blue pill thinking mentality. For too long in my life, I've done stuff based on what I feel is right by societal standards or what people expect of me. There is absolutely nothing wrong. In your short reality, your lens, your 1 in 400 trillion odds of being alive, what the fuck is wrong with you just playing the dating game entirely as you want to?
Yeah.
Forget listening to anyone else's opinion. If it makes you happy to stay in relationships until it's about to break out the honeymoon phase and just do that on repeat for 40 years, why not do that?
Yeah.
Why not? I mean, no one, people are judging, but who gives a shit?
I think we've sort of found a bit of a model, haven't we, particularly with the travelling, because that is a bit of a game changer. If you're moving around, and also a little bit with some of the apps and stuff, and obviously the day game is a massive, or the cold approach is a massive part of it, because it allows you to meet new people the whole time. But if you're constantly going out, you're constantly being social, approaching, whether that is online or you know, really ideally it should be more in real life, but whatever. You're doing that, you're getting new leads into the funnel. You're kind of dating. You're dating, but it's clear to the woman that this is kind of fun. It's not like you're trying to lock her down. It's not like, you know, she kind of gets the deal. She's enjoying that as well, because maybe she's in that phase of her life. She just wants to have a good time. Everyone's happy, really. I don't see a massive downside to that. I mean, what you have to accept is that, you know, sometimes some of those women, they're gonna drop off the plate spinning, right? Because they're going to get boyfriends, they're going to get into more serious relationships. Maybe you're not that dude for them, but that's fine, you know. I think you can make a decision about this stuff. I'm not sure about the idea of falling in love, like it's something that just happens and you can't prevent it. I think you can be pretty clear-eyed with this stuff. You can sit down with a girl and be like, yeah, you're cute, you're beautiful, you're fun, I really like you as a person, but you could just know inside, look, this is not going to be a serious thing. And I think you can kind of, it's not like forcing yourself, I think you could just kind of hold that line.
I agree. I mean, it's an endlessly fascinating topic, and ultimately I think it comes down to what you
Having edge.
Yeah, sign up.
No, seriously, sign up.
Yeah, nothing else to say really. Make sure you come to Bogota as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We grab a chair.
Yeah, for sure.